Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is day 22 of 28 days of AZ Terraform, and today we'll be doing, as you've already be aware of, that we'll be doing a mini project these days. So today also we'll have a mini project and it's based on Azure SQL. So yes, we'll be provisioning SQL database along with the best practices, some dependent resources, and also we'll be testing the connectivity by implementing the firewall rules as well. So today I'm not gonna give the demo. Instead, I have my friend with me today. So please welcome Rishabh. Hello Rishabh, thanks for joining. So Rishabh will be helping us out with the today's demonstration, and he'll be walking you through the Terraform code and everything. So I'll give the mic over to you, Rishabh, and it's all. You can go ahead, please.
Sure. Thank you, Piyush, for having me. I think it's almost after a year that we are kind of
Yes,
collaborating again.
we
So
the
it's
last collaboration we did was for the Azure DevOps series on serverless video. That was the
Mhm.
last time that we did. But yeah, it's always a pleasure having you on the podcast or having you on such projects, mini projects. So it's always a pleasure.
No, thank you, Piyush, for having me. And yeah, as Piyush said, today we will be doing a mini project where we'll be deploying an Azure SQL server. So it's a managed SQL service. If you have known about, or if you have worked with databases, you might be familiar with managed services. Every cloud provider has their own. Similarly, Azure has Azure SQL Server, but we'll be using Terraform, which is the IAC tool, because part of the whole series that Piyush is doing, which I think is amazing. So to get started, I'm gonna start sharing my screen here. There are a few things that we can do first. I think the ideation should be the first. So let's start with a quick kind of diagram, and then Piyush, feel free to chime in if I miss anything. But basically, we'll have Azure, and within Azure, let's say this is our resource group. So resource groups are how things are managed, or resources are managed for a certain project or a certain environment within Azure. And I'll make sure I make the text size bigger because this is way too small even for me to read. Okay, make this extra large. There we go. I can make the browser window big. And we'll only have one resource today. Do we have a SQL? I guess we can use the cylinder because it represents. Oh, there is SQL with a cloud. So this will be our resource within Azure, but what we are using is Terraform to deploy this. So we'll have Terraform here. This basically deploys the entire resource group, but we only have one resource so far. There are different resource. I don't want to say subtypes, but what would be a good phrase? So the SQL server itself is one resource, but we'll have another resource block for a database because a single SQL server can have multiple databases. So instead of, I'll make this big. So this is our SQL server. Within this SQL server, we'll have a sample database. I'll just name it sample. Sample DB. This will be also part of our Terraform code. We'll see how that gets deployed. But all of this, since it's managed service, Azure kind of takes care of like the networking bits, provisioning underlying hardware resources and stuff. We'll also need a firewall rule so that we can access this because in kind of your real world project, you will probably have some kind of either 2-tier or 3-tier architecture where you'll be using, database services, in this case SQL, And you will want to make sure that either your front end or the API server has access to this. So this will be our firewall rule. And for today, I'll be using my public IP so that I can connect to the database and see that it's possible, right? That our firewall rule is working. But in production use case, this should be, your application environment, whatever networking settings that it's using. You'll have to kind of enable the firewall for that specific network. Either it's in Azure using app containers, or if it's a simple VM. So that is kind of the diagram or a look at resources that we'll be deploying today. Piyush, do you think I'm missing anything?
No, no, no. We are good. We are going with
Cool.
the great speed. It's just like you have already mentioned, using a public IP on the SQL Server special database is not recommended for production, but
No.
it's part of our demo, and this is a good start. And then when we'll be doing, there is like a big project about three-tier architecture in Azure. So when we do that, we'll see how do we create firewall rules from only the backend servers and restricting all the access. So we'll cover all that part later on as well. So this is good for this video. Yeah, please carry on.
Sounds good. Yeah, the term I was looking was for VNets, because Azure uses VNets. So yeah, as Piyush mentioned, for security purposes, this is not recommended. This is more of like me confirming that, okay, my database was created, my
Yeah.
SQL server was created, and I'm able to connect to it. Awesome. So a few things I've already done is not a lot, but just created an empty directory called Terraform Azure SQL, and I had it open in my Visual Studio Code here.
Your terminal looks pretty cool. Like, but what are you using with it? I'm sure
Um,
many of the viewers will have this question.
hmm,
So I'm asking you that.
there's a lot of customization that I've
A lot of
done,
customization. Okay.
but I think the key one is 𝗭𝗲𝗃𝗍. I think that's
Hmm.
how you pronounce it.
Okay.
Huge fan. And then on top of it, you have like multiple Powerline fonts that enables these like emojis or
Okay.
glyphs, I think they are called. And on top of that, there is within that config file, you can enable on how to display like this. So this is the RAM
Hmm.
usage. This is the CPU usage on my machine right now, and this
Okay.
is the battery or the power
Hmm.
um, of the laptop right now. So I find these really cool because just gives me quick access to the metrics on how my
Yep.
machine is doing. But maybe I'll create like a gist on GitHub with
Sure.
my
Yeah, that
config.
would be really helpful. And I'll share that in the description if anyone wants to follow the same. Cool.
For sure.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to our VS Code, and then the number one thing I want to do is make sure it's readable. So
Mhm.
Piyush, let me know if the
Yeah, it's
font
good.
size
Good
looks good.
now.
Okay, cool. So I'm pretty sure you already know the drill, because Piyush has already covered this quite a few times now, but we'll start with creating a main.tf file. TF is just the extension of the Terraform file. We'll be using HCL, but also the first thing we have to do is create a provider. So what I like to do is have it within the Terraform block as have it within the Terraform block as required providers. So here I can not only define required version for Terraform, but also the required version for the Azure RM provider. So for the required version for Terraform, Piyush, do you have any um, specific version that you're using in the
The
series, or
one that we were using, I believe we were using the latest version, but let me check. We were using 4.8.0. No, okay.
um
So Terraform version is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
1.9.0.
Okay, I'll leave it to anything greater than
Okay.
equal to one.
Mhm.
And then I guess you were talking about the Azure RM, right?
RM version is 4.8.0.
Okay, let's use that. So Azure RM. Oops, there we go. 4.8.0.
4.8.0.
Okay. Version is equal to 4.8. Oops. Also, I don't recommend hard coding versions, but so you can, this can be a task for you when you do this, like this part of the series. Maybe have something that we had for required versions for Terraform. So this means that you can have anything greater than equal to 1.0. So have similar thing for the Azure RM provider. We also have to specify the source where this provider is being pulled from, which is 𝗏𝗄𝗃, and then I guess Azure RM.
Azure.
Yes, there we go. So that gives us the provider block that we'll be using for today. We also have to specify it here. So provider, Azure RM, and we'll also have an empty block for the features.
Features.
So features, there we go. And then we can save this. So that is the entire provider and Terraform kind of block, specifying the versions which we want to use. Now, the first resource that with any Azure deployment from Terraform is the RG, or the resource group. So let's create our resource group. Resource is Azure. Oops, Azure. Sorry, this is actually not my keyboard. As you can tell,
Yeah.
I'm not at my regular setup. So Azure resource group, hence I am struggling. Um,
That's okay.
and we'll just name it RG, just so that it makes my life easier when we have to specify this resource block anywhere else. So there are two things, right? The necessary settings, I'm guessing, is the name and the
Name and
location.
location. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one we can name my SQL Server RG, and then location can be, let's go with East US because that's the closest, at least to me, and I'm, yeah, for Pews too. um, so that gives us our first resource. And if I go back to, so right now we just created our resource group. The second thing would
I
be to
guess the
create,
format that you have given, it's the AWS specific format. For Azure, it's East space US. I guess it's showing some error over there. Yeah.
oh, I thought that worked. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So you mean like
Try.
this?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah,
Ah, okay.
I'm not sure if it is case sensitive. So try with capital E and US in capitals as well. Yeah. They should work.
I didn't know that. Well, TIL. Today I learned. Because I thought you could use uh, like
Yeah, maybe
lowercase.
let's have a look at the documentation. That's a good brainstorm we can do, because others
Yeah.
might also have the same question.
Your RM location. Oh, you're right.
But does it say what is supported and not? Uh,
Region type, physical, logical, zone mappings,
yeah,
timeout.
just say supported Azure location. So maybe from the Microsoft documentation, we'll get some idea. Try the first one, the first link, the GitHub link that we have. Yeah, this one. Yeah, so it says
Yeah, so like I was using the 𝗔𝘂𝗃𝗃𝗧𝗘𝗧.
oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, maybe this format does not work in Terraform.
mm,
I'm not sure. Can we try running it? Okay. Let's see if it is throwing the error with the Terraform plan or validate anything.
sure, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, yeah, I was using this
Yeah.
East US
And
without
and
any.
what is the first column? What's the first column over there?
The first column is region name,
Region name. Okay.
and then you have 𝗔𝘂𝗃𝗃𝗧𝗃, you have
Okay.
short notation, and then you also have like internal Terraform notation.
Mhm. Okay, let's try maybe. Let's see.
East US. Let's see. Okay. Second resource was our Azure, and I know this changed too. So Azure RM MS SQL Server, I believe, because earlier it was just SQL Server,
SQL
but
Server.
then
Okay.
I think that is deprecated. But again, I think Google comes to our rescue. So Terraform Azure RM SQL Server. Yeah, so I was talking about this
Yep.
one, and as you can see, the resource is deprecated
In
in
3.
version 3.0,
Yeah. So if
and you have
anyone is using the provider version before 3.0, 3.0, I mean before 4.0, then this should work. Otherwise, we can use the other one that you have suggested, Azure MS
Mhm.
SQL Server.
Yeah, and usually when you do like Terraform plan, it'll give you an error
Yeah.
that this resource is deprecated based
Mhm.
on the versions that you have mentioned in your provider blocks. That's how it
Sure.
like
Okay.
checks with the API. For the Terraform resource block name, I'm going to use SQL Server, and then there are a few settings that we do have to specify. So the obvious ones are the name, the resource group, and their location. We can just use our what is that notation called, Piyush? I keep forgetting that. When you can specify the name of a previous resource block. I thought it
Like
was
from from the resource itself, like resource dot no Azure
yeah,
RM resource group dot
yeah,
RG
yeah, yeah.
dot something. Yeah.
I thought like I always think it was called something.
Oh,
I maybe I read it somewhere,
okay.
but
Yeah,
who
I
knows?
don't know. What
Okay,
does it call?
so we'll use that.
Mhm.
So in order to use that,
It's a sort of implicit dependency, I guess. I'm not sure if
maybe
there
that
is
is
any other.
yeah. So you can already see if you have the Terraform extension installed, you'll get these errors and HCL highlighting, and also
Mhm.
like suggestions like the autocomplete that I just got. Like if you type Azure RM underscore underscore resource underscore group dot rg and then dot name is what we were looking for. See, I told you this keyword is tricking me. Um, we also need the location, and the location will use the same thing as before. Rg dot instead of name, we'll just type in location. And you can see the red squiggly means that we are missing something. Um, and this can give you like a quick fix kind of solution.
Mm.
The best is to read the documentation on the MS SQL Server resource type. But as you can see, we are missing version. So version, again, I highly recommend reading the documentation, but I believe the latest is 12. This is Azure SQL Server version. I don't know if it needs to be, I think it needs to be in quotes, so we'll do that. Um, what else? Oh, so you also have to generate a login, even though it's not necessary, like it's not required, but we'll create an admin login. And and we'll also create an admin password. So for the login, I don't care much about the user. So for the user, we could say something like, I don't know, SQL admin. For the password, there is this provider called random, and you can also have a local file from which you can extract this out, which is not part of your GitHub repository, because never never expose your passwords, especially the administrator login password. But I'm gonna follow a very bad practice today of hard coding the password. I think you need to use like characters and numbers and strings and stuff, so I think that should do it. Otherwise we'll get an error. But yeah, never do this. use Use strong passwords, but also don't commit them to your Git repository. Okay. I don't see any errors, so I think we should be good on the Azure RM MS SQL Server resource. The next one, if we go back to our diagram, is our sample database. So for the sample database, I don't have any mock data that we could have inside this. So I'm just gonna create like an empty database, and it is pretty easy to create. So if I go back here, do resource, and we'll use the Azure RM. Only if I could type Azure RM MS SQL, and I think it's called database. There we go. So this will create our database. I will name this sample DB. And then you only have to specify two things. One is the name of your actual database. So the name is going to be sample DB. And the server ID where this should be created. So the server ID is going to be Azure RM MS SQL. So this right here. And now you can do dot ID. This will link, or this will create this database within this SQL server. Awesome. And I guess the only resource now we are left with, which is an important one if we want to test if this works or not, is the firewall rule. Azure
So
RM.
by default, access will be denied, right? We have to
Yes.
explicitly open the
Yep.
port. Yeah.
We could, you know what? I think that would be a good test is we could deploy this
Mhm.
and see within
If it
the
is
Azure
getting blocked or
portal.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
also within the Azure portal, we can see what the network settings is. But
Sure.
yes, by default, it is gonna be blocked.
Sure. Sounds good. And why is it throwing that blue?
That is just my spell check. Um,
Oh, that's the spell check. Okay, that's
yeah, so
fine
it
then.
says it's not a word. So if I do this, it's
Yeah.
gonna be fixed.
Yeah,
There
that's
you
okay. I mean,
go.
that's
Yeah.
good.
Yep. Um, yeah, I feel pretty good. Let's do Command
Yeah.
S. And the moment of truth is because I was telling Piyush right before this, I was doing something else within Azure with Terraform, and my subscription, I think, is I like either I missed a bill on my subscription, but it is not letting me deploy any resources.
Okay.
So we'll see if my Azure subscription works. So the first command, as you know, is going to be Terraform init, which will initialize um, the backend. We don't have any remote backends yet, but it'll also download the provider plugins from HashiCorp. So as you can see, we are using Azure
Mhm.
RM. We hard coded 4.8.0. So it was successfully initialized. Let me clear the screen here. The next thing would be to run Terraform plan. You could also do Terraform format. And there we go. So we have our first error saying the subscription ID is required, provider property when performing plan and apply. I thought I was logged in. So before doing Terraform plan, the other step would be to make sure you're logged in with your Azure CLI. So let me see if I'm not. Okay, it's going to open a browser window for me to log in. So I'm going to do that on my second screen. I know it is not visible, but it's
No, but
just
it is not
basically,
necessary as well. That's
yeah,
okay. Right.
there we go. So you can see as soon as I logged in my browser, we have like the subscription and the tenant from my account. Let's see if Terraform plan works. So this might be something that they introduced in the provider
Yes, they
4.8.
did that recently. I believe you have to export the environment variable.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Now you have to guide me, Piyush.
Yeah. Okay. So for that, you need actually three environment variables. Let
Okay.
me just give me a second. I'm looking through it.
Yeah, no worries. I don't know if it makes it easier if you want to deploy this Terraform code. I can put it into a GitHub repository.
Sure, we can do that, but well, I guess like for now it's fine because we have already set the screens and everything. Then it will be just wastage of some time. So we need actually four environment variables, and
Mhm.
let me ping you those. We need client ID, client secret, subscription ID, tenant ID. But I believe that is when we use service principal, right? So for now,
Yes.
you just need the subscription ID. So export ARM underscore subscription underscore ID. That's the only thing you need, I guess.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
export all caps,
All
ARM.
caps, yeah. ARM subscription underscore ID and then your subscription ID. Let me just pause the recording while you're entering that. Okay, we have resumed the recording and yeah, over to you, Rishabh.
Yeah, so thank you, Piyush. So we did set up environment variable within my terminal for the subscription ID. And for obvious reasons, I didn't want to disclose my subscription ID. And now we can run Terraform plan again within our directory to see if it, hopefully, it will not give the same error because now we have the subscription ID set up. So our plan
Mm-hmm.
works.
Yep,
Um,
it works. Awesome.
there are three resources to
So
add.
looks like it did take East US as the valid location, and somehow the HashiCorp extension did not like it. That's why it was throwing error over there.
Oh, no, that was also my spell check.
Okay. No, earlier it was in red.
Oh,
That
okay.
was in red
Hmm,
earlier. Maybe. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
we can continue. Okay.
yeah, because yeah, I was as I told you, like I was working with some other project for Terraform in Azure yesterday. And I'm like, I use this like naming convention for
Okay.
regions, and it worked.
Yeah.
So, um, but if they change that, I know what is broken. So thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
So the three resources, as we talked about, the SQL Server, the resource group, and the database within our SQL Server. So as I was telling, my subscription might have a problem. We'll see once we do Terraform apply if the resource can get deployed or not. That has to do something with my billing, I guess. But let's see. There we go. Um,
A resource ID already exists.
what?
You already have the resources created.
Let's see.
Is it the same name?
Hmm. Very interesting. Also, this
But
is
you gave the random name. Oh,
no.
maybe
This
it
is
has to
for the
be.
resource group.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, the resource group. Yeah. So this is for the resource group,
Okay.
the
Maybe try
MySQL
changing the
server.
name. Yeah. Try changing.
Yeah, and also this is a shared subscription, so this is not
Okay.
just my
Right.
subscription. So who knows? Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to scroll that fast, but basically I changed or added demo
Hmm.
within the resource group, and that should help us with the error that we saw earlier, because you can't have two resource groups with same name for obvious reasons. I'm gonna hit enter yes. Okay.
Creating. Okay, maybe because it's a managed database, it will take, I guess, few minutes to provision.
It should. My only experience has been with RDS, which is like
Yeah, RDS
AWS.
takes a lot of time,
It
right?
takes a lot of time.
Okay,
There
so
we
we
go.
have an error or what?
Yeah,
Provisioning disabled. Oh, that was the issue that you
thing
were
that I
saying.
was telling you
Okay,
about. Yeah,
let
yeah,
me
yeah.
share my subscription. Just give me a second. Okay, so looks like Rishabh had some issues with the subscription. We changed the subscription. Now it worked fine and it has created all three resources. Okay,
Yep.
so let's proceed with that.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I think it would have been good to have an output block so that it could have given me, the server fully qualified
Fully
domain name.
qualified domain name. Yes. Okay.
And because we already had the administrator login and
Yeah.
password,
Mhm. But
and
we can check it from the portal. That's fine too.
yeah, the only thing is, Piyush, I don't have access to that subscription.
Uh,
I used your
okay.
subscription, right?
Okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah. True. 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 Let me check. So resource group and SQL Server demo. Okay, so what do you need? You need the database name,
yeah, yeah,
server name, right?
server name, yes.
Okay, let me ping. Okay,
Thank you.
no worries.
So, this is the server name.
Mhm.
I guess, Piyush, do you have any SQL clients like the Azure SQL Studio?
On my screen.
Okay. I don't have it
Uh,
either
I
on
guess
this machine
this Azure also should have something, right? On the portal itself.
to connect.
He- We don't have.
Maybe, I think. Yeah, it says Azure Portal. Let's see. Let's see. You might be right. Hmm. Azure SQL. Hmm. Doesn't look like it's only services. I don't know what is Database Watchers. Database Watcher is a managed monitoring solution. No.
Uh, yeah. Okay, so there is no compute storage, no connection string, query editor. Oh yeah, there is this query editor. Yeah, I guess that should be the one. Okay, let's do this. Let me share my screen.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
Cool. So I guess after a few seconds, I was able to install the Azure Data Studio, but this could be anything. I know there's like Beekeeper Studio. There are other few SQL
Or
clients that
you
you
can
can
also
use.
use MySQL client, any
Yeah,
MySQL client
MySQL
on
client will
CLI
work too.
based. That should also work.
Yep, yep, yep. So here's where the server name goes in, which I think I have copied. There we go.
Yeah.
For the
And
authentication type, um, I'm guessing the
SQL
can I
login. Yeah.
zoom in? Oh, there we go. I was like, the text is very small. Yeah, for the authentication type, you're gonna use SQL login, and if I go back to my, so that is SQL admin is the username. The password is strong password 123. Go back in here, paste the password, and then SQL admin was the user. Sure, why not? Let's click on remember password because this is my personal machine. So, wow, I didn't expect that. It found that I cannot connect to the SQL Server instance, and
Mm.
it prompted me to create.
Oh, you are going out of the camera frame maybe a
Oh,
little bit. Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. So it found out that I cannot connect to the SQL Server instance, and since
Mm.
this is like Azure Data Studio, I guess it was able to kind of analyze that we need to create a firewall rule for the SQL Server,
Mm-hmm.
and it also has like my public IP already in there. It is asking me to add an Azure account, but since we want to do this in Terraform, we should go back and create the new resource for our firewall rule. So I'm going to do that by typing in
It's all good.
resource, and then we'll do Azure RM my sorry MySQL, and I think it is called firewall rule.
That's fine. Yeah.
We should see an error if this is not the case, and we'll name this firewall rule for our Terraform block. So Azure RM MySQL firewall rule, and if you hover over it, you can see it says it's a resource type within the Azure RM 4.8.0. And if you click on the red squiggly line, you can also see all the required attributes that you need to specify. So the first one, pretty self-explanatory, that we need to specify this rule to a server. In our case, it was this. So Azure RM MySQL server dot SQL server dot ID. And then for the next thing, let's see what it was. We need a start IP address and end IP address, and we
Name.
also need a name. So let's do the name first. Name is going to be MySQL server firewall. So now we only need start IP and an end IP address. And then we should see the error go away. So if this was a network, like we were talking in the beginning, if it's a VNet, you have a specific subnet that needs access to this. You'll have like a range of that subnet. In my case, since it's one public IP address, and give me 1 second, I need to find out what my public IP is. In that case, the start IP address and the end IP address is going to be same. So I have my public IP, and this is going to be the same. And there we have our firewall rule set up for the server that we have created. So now let's go back to the terminal. And if we do Terraform, I do want to apply directly,
Sure.
but
Yeah. That's it. Apply.
it'll still ask you for the yes prompt. But I'll look at the state file to see what is already deployed. And you can see it only has
One plan
one
to
to
add.
add,
Yeah. Mm.
which looks correct, which is our firewall rule. So I'm going to hit yes, and it shouldn't
Yep.
take a long
Done.
time.
Yep.
There we go. So now if I go back and if I click on the list of databases,
We have
nope.
to refresh it. Maybe yeah. Connect. Enter the string again or something.
Yeah, let's hit cancel. Let's click on create connection again. You sent me the server names. I'm gonna copy that. We use SQL login. SQL admin was the username. Let's go back to our Visual Studio Code to get the password. Paste that password in. Looks good.
Okay, let's hit the refresh. Oh, sorry, the database drop down.
Nope.
Still
Let me see if my public IP is correct.
add my client.
136.226.76.176. Ooh, might be not. Let's see. It might have changed. What is my public IP? Let's try the IP that Azure is finding out. I don't know how it got to this IP. So just 176 at the end. Let's see.
Mhm.
Hit save, go back to Terraform. Let's do Terraform apply. Sorry, go back to the terminal, I guess. And you can see it detected one change. Looks right. Okay. Let's see now. It should work. Oh,
Okay,
there we go.
now it does. Maybe issues with the public IP.
Sample DB was the database that we created, but there's
Mhm.
also a master database
Master
that
database.
gets created by
Mhm.
default. So let's hit connect. And there we go. We are able to
Able to
connect
connect.
with our Azure SQL Server. And you can see kind of like the pricing tier,
Mhm.
the compatibility level. The edition is general purpose, but you can run, SQL statements now. This if looking at the bigger picture, if you have an application, that is where all of these operations are going to take place. But for some people, like who are data scientists or data analysts, they use SQL query a lot on the data sets to kind of do some analysis. I don't even know. I think because this is a blank database, if I can do select star, um, there shouldn't be any tables here. So we won't be able to run any
Yep.
statements apart from like you could do the general ones to get details about the database and the server, like things like, oh, who's the owner of the database and things like that. But I think that is too out of scope
Yeah.
of
No,
this demo.
that's good. That's good enough. We were just focusing on the infrastructure provisioning, and you have covered it well. So I guess we are good for do you want to cover anything else, or we're good now, right?
Yeah, I think you might like you already might have talked about like the best practices of
Yeah. So what
Terraform.
I'll do for that, what I'll do is, so I'm gonna add that task, and in that task, we'll be following some best practices because we don't show everything, and so that people can also spend some time, do the hands-on, and uh, actually learn something out of it. So for that, what I will do, I will add the task in which you have to create a virtual network, and then inside that you will create a subnet, a virtual machine, and then you'll be provisioning a firewall rule based on that subnet that you have created, and you can do the testing from your virtual network to the SQL client or to the SQL server. So they can do the test in this video because it's sort of a mini project. So we just wanted to show how do we create database objects such as database server and firewall rules, like all the dependencies that it comes with. So you have covered it. So thank you so much, Rishabh. And as always, it was a pleasure for you have on this series. So it is sort of becoming a tradition now. So wherever we have a series, you'll have at least one video for sure. And so we'll be have many more plans in the future for many such series. So thank you so much for being a part of it, and I wish you have a good day. So thank you so much. Thank you once
Thank
again.
you, Piyush. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks.